conversation. They only really came to life in movies while conversing. When you think of Dante and Randall, you think of them as talking. Their entire lives were defined by discussion with each other. It's what made them live. It's what made them tolerate the jobs that they were in, the lives that they led, and stuff like that. So the last conversation that they ever have is the absolute worst conversation that they ever have. And they never get to go back and get a do-over. Now, you could say, well, Randall goes in and apologizes. Sure, but that's not a conversation. That's one-sided. That's what happens when a motherfucker dies. You think of everything you could say in that fucking moment, but you don't say it when they're here, man. Don't wait till they're gone and give them their flowers. Fucking, you have an argument, put it to bed. I don't give a shit what it is. Because we're at an age now where people drop like fucking flies. We don't have that kind of fucking time. So those are the two things, my gift to you. The money would be better, I'll be honest. But there's some useful shit in there, man, because I've been seeing a lot of people online and meeting people afterwards in the photo sessions and stuff who are like, oh my God, man, you just kicked me in the ass. I'm gonna go do that thing I wanted to do. I'm gonna write my movie. I'm gonna do this. I'm opening my business. I love hearing shit like that. I love making people laugh with the movie. I love making people cry. I bathe in your fucking tears every night. It's so fucking awesome. But more importantly than anything else, I love when people see a thing and go like, that makes me want to do a thing. That's the best kind of art there is, man. It's a piece of art that gives beyond just the entertainment value. There's a line in that movie, Mank, that came out on Netflix last year, where he talks about the business of Hollywood and the idea of like, you're selling people a product that they don't even get to leave with. All they have is the memory of it and stuff. And so, I get it. We're in a very illusory business and stuff where it's like, you think something happened, but it didn't, and you don't really get to walk away with anything but a fucking memory. So with the memory, I always feel like, here's a little extra to walk away with. Something to think about that kind of kicks you in the ass, maybe makes you want to do your thing before the clock runs out. So that's why Dante had to be sacrificed, so that you would do your fucking shit. So you better get to work. Earn it, man! Mallrats 2 is something we've been working on for a while, man. This movie exists because of Mallrats 2. 6 years ago at this point, I went into Universal and said, hey man, I want to do a sequel to Mallrats finally. And Universal was like, we own Mallrats? I was like, fuck yeah, we made it with Gramercy in '95. And they look at their records and like, holy shit, we do. Oh, I love that movie. I'm like, great man, because I got the sequel for you right here. Gave them the script and shit, and their reaction was this. I don't know. It's neither Fast nor Furious. And so at that point, I was just like, oh shit, they kicked us down to a lower division at Universal, not Big Boy Universal, but the Universal where they give you $5 million to make a straight-to-video movie, which I would totally accept and be great, except we need $7 million to make our movie. That's our budget. So we went back to them to counter and be like, well, 5 ain't gonna do it, we need 7. They're like, well, we don't go 7 in this division. And I was like, all right, well, what if I bring $2 million to the table? And they're like, we don't partner up. And I was like, you won't have to pay this fucking money back. And they're like, that makes us uncomfortable. So we've been playing footsie back and forth for like almost 6 years at this point. And then, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess, 2, 3, got COVID, 3. When we were finished with the Reboot Roadshow tour, I'd been talking about, I'm gonna work on Clerks 3 next. And Liz Destro, one of our producers, was like, I keep hearing you talk about Clerks 3, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'm gonna write it as soon as we make Mallrats. She goes, well, I'll make you a $10,000 bet that if you write Clerks 3 right now, I can get that made before Mallrats. And I was like, oh yeah? So, she was right about that. Mallrats still floundering in Universal. Now, we're in a good place with Lionsgate, people that made this movie. They got along well with us, we got along great with them and shit like that. Came in under budget, we worked insanely well with the marketing team and stuff, so they were like, we think you guys are great, what do you want to do next? Because we got into this relationship with Lionsgate because y'all. Because people bought so many fucking Blu-rays and DVDs of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot that Lionsgate called us up and they were like, hey man, if you have any more of this Jay and Silent Bob bullshit that you can make for like $7 million or under, we'll fucking do it. I was like, I have nothing but Jay and Silent Bob bullshit. So that's how we got here. And then, they were like, what do you want to do next? And I told them, well, we're probably going to go back to Universal and try to make it work with Mallrats. And fucking Lionsgate goes, oh, we work with them all the time, let us get into it. So Clerks 3 may be the kaopectate that loosens up the shit that is Twilight of the Mallrats. So hopefully, fingers crossed, just by being here on this tour, we're manifesting fucking Mallrats next. Thank you. Bam, over here, what's your name, Cam?
My name is Tom.
Tom?
Yeah.
Everyone give it up for Tom.
Been a big fan for many years. And this is the second movie that actually hit me emotionally. First one was Chasing Amy.
Oh
At
my
the
God.
end, where it's laughter, and then the wall that was the threesome conversation was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That just like was like went serious. This movie, I'm a father, so seeing it like, you know, at the little thing with Becky, you know, the memorial right out there, I'm like, oh my God, he's a single father now.
Yes.
And then the realization when he has the flashback while he's in the hospital with Randall and seeing Becky pregnant. I was like, whoa, oh wow, he lost both of them.
Yeah.
Now for
Kevin Smith is a vengeful god.
For his lamination, for his death note, when she shows up, I was actually wondering, was there any inclination in the script or even up to filming of you having the daughter with them as they left the theater? Because I was in my mind, I was like, please don't do it, please don't do it. I'm already crying. If he puts her in there, I would die. And when he was like, no.
There was a discussion, man. Here's the thing. This, as it ends now, wasn't scripted at all. In the script, Randall goes to the hospital, shows Dante the movie, Dante sees the movie, and then dies. So 2-3 days before filming, I said to Liz and Jordan, the producers, I was like, hey man, if money wasn't an issue, or schedule, I'm gonna hit you with an idea. They're like, okay. I said, I always wanted Dante to die in a movie theater. That's how he died in the original version of Clerks 3. He dies in a movie theater saving his young deaf daughter from a gunman who comes in and mows the theater down, like Aurora. I wrote it right after that. So he goes out fucking heroically and shit. But him dying in a movie theater was in the DNA of the movie and stuff. So I said to the girls, I was like, what if Randall takes Dante from the hospital to a movie theater to show him the movie? And Jordan was like, well, Dante's still gonna die? And I said, yeah. And she goes, then Randall kills him? I was like, you're right, that's probably a bad move. I was like, fuck, because I always wanted him to die in a movie theater. And Liz goes, well, it could be a movie theater in his mind. And I was like, oh, they do that in movies, don't they? You don't have to be literal at all. She was like, no, not at all. I was like, oh my God, let's fucking do that and shit. So it came together very late. We called up the movie theater in Red Bank where we do Vulgarthon all the time. It used to be the Bowtie Cinemas, and now it's, it used to be White Street Cinema when I was a kid, or Monmouth Street Cinema, and now it's Count Basie Cinemas. It's part of the Count Basie Theater that's like down the street. The play theater and stuff. So the movie house is there. So we reached out to them. We're like, can we use that place? They're like, absolutely. And shot that sequence. And there was a moment where I was talking to the girls again, and I don't call them girls dismissively. They are the women that run my life. They want to be called girls because they're both older. So they love it when I'm like, girls? They're like, yes. But whenever I'm like, the ladies, they're like, who, your mother? Yeah. So I talked to the girls and I was like, I can't believe the movie theater thing's gonna work out because I redrafted and they were like, this is great, we're gonna move forward with this. And so I was like, remember like the kid died in the car accident. And they were both like, don't bring the kid. Like, that's creepy. You know, it's creepy to be like, there's a baby walking around in heaven or whatever the fuck, and heaven is this movie theater, and all of a sudden she's gonna be next to him holding the baby. Like, it was just a hat on a hat kind of thing. So the only two moments are you see she's pregnant, and then at the cemetery when Becky actually names the baby and calls her a Grace, which my mom was like bawling. My mom's name is Grace, and she was like, I'm dead in the movie. So there was a discussion, like, do we show the kid? And I was like, no. And the girls made it, like, patently, like, no, don't do that, don't do it. I think, honestly, they're producers, so they were like, oh, getting a baby, that's gonna put us back on the schedule. So they were like, creatively, you don't need that. And I was like, yeah, right, you're right. But there was a thought about it, man. So weird. No, but I never thought anyone would ask about that, and that's fucking wonderful. Thank you. That's deep cuts right there. Good? Thank you, my friend. What's your name, Captain?
Hey, Kevin, what's up, man? My name is Dana. I'm a big fan. Just
Dana? Is
like
Dana?
Yep.
Everyone give it up for Dana. He's next.
I had a question, but it got answered, but I got another one that I came up with on the fly. So
Nice. Always good to have a back pocket.
Right. Two things. One, what was it that got you and Jay together way back in the day? Number one. And number two, can I get you to autograph these pants?
The pants? Yeah, do you have a Sharpie?
Yeah, I got the tag and the pin. Will
That'll
that
work. She is a Sharpie. You want me to write across the pants? That's teamwork. Teamwork? Making the dream work right there and shit. I'll take the Sharpie. I will sign your tits as well. Take the pants off the rack. You can put your shit down. And then I'll use your back. You hold on to the mic and chit chat to the audience.
So what was it that got you and Jay together to begin with? Because, I mean, you guys obviously have been together a long time, and I consider you and him like a team, just like Cheech and Chong or some of the other ones. You know, you guys are hilarious. You make all of us bust up laughing, and we totally appreciate you guys' humor. So.
Excellent. I wrote across the leg. And I wrote, I heart you on it. Explain that to others. Walking around with a pair of man's pants saying he loves me. How did Jay and I become Jay and I? By accident. It wasn't even by choice. We backed into a friendship. Jay, I was hanging out with Brian and Walter, the aforementioned Brian and Walter from Tell 'em Steve Dave. And we all worked at the Highlands Recreation Center. I was there for a one-year program. The program ended and they didn't renew me. I moved on. Brian and Walter remained my friends. We would hang out and shit, go to comic book shows, go play hockey. I started hearing them tell stories about Jason Mewes all the time. They'd be like, oh my God, he did this today. Can you believe it? I was like, who? They're like, a fucking kid, Jay Mewes. He's so fucked up. And they would tell me all these Jay Mewes stories. And
No, not him.
Yeah, him. And I was jealous because I was the new friend that they had. All of a sudden they were talking about an even newer friend who was a younger, funnier model than me. So I was kind of threatened by him. So we were all going to a show at the Penta Hotel, the Pennsylvania Hotel, right across from Madison Square Garden in New York. And I was going to drive because Brian and Walter wouldn't drive in the city and shit. I was the only city driver. And I showed up to Brian's place and fucking Jason Mewes is there too. And I was like, what's this kid doing here? Like, we're gonna bring him to New York. And I was like, I'm not gonna fucking transport a minor across state lines. I was like, no way. And then Brian's like, fuck it, I'll drive. And Jay at that point goes, shotgun, and jumps into the fucking front seat. And I sat in the back seat for the whole fucking ride up to New York, and Jay was just sitting there doing his things like, snooch, snoogin, snoochy moochies. And Brian and Walter were like, ah. And I was sitting in the back like, he ain't fucking funny at all. So we go up to the con, and fucking they buy him some books and shit like that. And because fucking Mewes was dirt poor. I was poor, Mewes was dirt poor and shit. So we bought him some comic books, some cheap comics and stuff. And the price they had to pay was the whole ride back. Brian and Walter kept creating and inventing scenarios where Jay was blowing people to get comic books. and it's about a 50 to 55 minute ride from the city to where we live. And so for the first 35 minutes, Jay went along with it. Where he was like, yeah, I was eating that dick, nooch. But Brian and Walter are merciless and relentless, if nothing else. So as it crept past the first half hour of mockery, Jason just kind of shut down and started reading comic books. And they were just in the front seat going, oh God, and then he licks the guy's asshole for a copy of Vigilante. Ha 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 ha. So I thought that like he would just be disinterested in them and shit, and be like, well, fuck these guys and shit. And eventually, it was the opposite. They grew disinterested in Jay. And so Jay would come around and they'd be like, we're busy, fuck off. And so Jay started showing up at my house, which was so fucking weird. My mom would come to my room and she'd be like, that dirty boy from town is here. And I was like, what, Jason Mewes? I knew exactly who she meant. She's like, yeah, what is he doing here? I was like, I don't know, I'll find out. And I go out to the front door and I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, what are we doing today? And I was like, we're not doing anything, man. I was like, you don't get it. We're not friends. Like, we're friends with Brian and Walter, so we have mutual friends, but you and I, we don't hang out. We're not friends. You understand? He was like, yeah, what are we doing today? And so I just kind of adopted him. Like, he just became mine because he was kind of left by them and he drifted over to me. And so, chiefly, I think what bonded us forever was I used to go to Quick Stop in the mornings on Sunday and have to make the New York Times, make all the newspapers. Newspapers were things that they used to write the news on before the internet. They used to come in multiple sections. You know, on Sunday, the newspaper starts coming to you on Thursday in pieces, and then on Sunday, the last piece, the front page, and all that shit comes, and you gotta put them all together. New York Times was like a fucking 15-page newspaper, came in multiple sections, was the pain in the ass to put together. We used 200 copies of the New York Times every Sunday morning. P.S. We made Clerks III, so I was at Quick Stop all summer. 1 copy of the New York Times on Sunday night. That's the world we live in. But back then, so many copies of the paper to make. So I would ask Brian and Walter, like, hey man, you want to come join me at Quick Stop at 5:30 on Sunday and make papers? They're like, fuck no. You know, Walter goes to bed at 4:30, so he's like, absolutely not and shit. I'd ask Jay Mewes, and Jay Mewes, I would be like, you want to come down to Quick Stop, make newspapers? And I'll give you $2. And he'd be like, all right, but keep the money. And so he'd come down to the store and we would just fucking hang out and make newspapers. And then when we were done making the newspapers, and we would sit there and chit chat. And he's my unlikeliest friend to this day. We have nothing in common whatsoever. It's like, you know, my whole life, it's like been dealing with a 12-year-old. You know, he gets mature now, he's about 16 and shit. But like, but still, he's got $1 million heart. Nickel head, but $1 million fucking heart, man. He's never read a bad comic book. He's never met a bad person. He's never seen a bad movie. He's all praise. He's all like, oh, it was awesome. What'd you think of this comic book? It was awesome. Why? It was in color. It was just so fucking positive. So we would sit there after we made the newspapers and we would watch on a dial TV with antennas, rabbit ears and shit, no cable at this point. We would watch what was on Sunday mornings, which was church on a lot of channels. Yep. But on PBS, they ran Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High. So we were clicking around one day and we saw like these kids and we were like, what's this? And we're watching it and they're all talking funny because they're Canadian. They're like, that's not what this is about and shit like that. And we were like, these assholes. And then all of a sudden, somebody's like, well, I'm getting an abortion, eh? And we were like, turn it up. That girl's 16. What are they? These girls fuck? What show is this? So we fell in love with Degrassi and Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High became our soap opera. Every Sunday morning we'd finish the papers and be like, oh my God, is Snake gonna really say that? Like, these are Young and the Restless and shit. And then after that, from like 11 o'clock till 12 o'clock on Channel 9, WOR, they would run a power hour block of Silver Spoons, the old Rick Schroeder show. And I know Rick Schroeder has become something of a controversial figure sometimes, but back then he was just the Ricker. And in that TV show, he lives with an impossibly rich dad, and his dad had standing arcade machines and a train that went through the house. And Mewes loved the show because he was the opposite. He didn't know who his father was. He had nothing, not a pot to piss in or a window to fucking throw it out, as my mother would say. And he was a neglected fucking kid. His mom was in and out of jail and shit. So watching Silver Spoons for him was just like, could you imagine if this was your life? And I'm happy to report that Jay, even though if I'm 52, he's 4 years younger, so he's 48, he lives his life like the kid from Silver Spoons. Right down to a fucking train in the house. That's awesome. It's very awesome. So that time that we spent working at Quick Stop was all the time we spent bonding, and I always thought he was hysterical. He's a true American original. Like, there's nobody like him in the world. And I would always say, like, fuck, man, somebody should put you in a movie. And he's like, why? I was like, I just want to see if anyone else thinks you're funny. I was like, I think you're funny, and like Walter and Brian think you're funny, but maybe you're just New Jersey funny, you know? Like, I would love to see if people outside of New Jersey found you funny. And that was before I ever wanted to be a filmmaker. That was when I just liked movies. But when I decided, oh shit, I want to be a filmmaker, one of the first people I thought of was like, I'm gonna be the guy that puts Jason Mewes in a movie, man. The guy that I've been whimsying about my whole life and shit. And so we did, I wrote the script, as you saw, and fucking just like in this movie, I gave him the script. I was like, what do you think? He's like, I don't sound like this. And I was like, yes you do. He's like, why would I say Snoochie Boochies? I'm like, why do you say Snoochie Boochies? So I spent like that whole movie teaching Jay to act like Jay on camera. And you know, people were like, he's so natural. I was like, yeah, fucking right, he's natural. I had my hand up his ass, working him like a puppet in the first movie. But by the second movie, he's off to the races. The second movie, Universal didn't want me to hire him. I was like, oh, I wrote the part for Jay. And they're like, we don't like him. And I was like, but that is Jay. And they're like, well, we want a real actor. And I was like, but he's in a movie. And they're like, that's not a real movie. So they wanted me to audition. I auditioned lots of people. The person that Universal wanted to play Jay in Mallrats was Seth Green, of all people. Their backup choice was Breckin Meyer, the two fucking fathers of Robot Chicken. Would have been Jay if Universal had their fucking way. And they auditioned, and I remember they were so bereft when they auditioned. Seth Green came in, he was like, bro, I don't even want this role. I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, my agent made me come. The guy who plays this is fucking brilliant. I was like, I know, I'm with you, man, but the studio won't let me hire him. He goes, well, this is a fucking shame. He goes, you shouldn't even make the movie. And I was like, would you like to audition now? He auditioned, he got to like the round robin playoff pizza party that we had. It was him, Breckin Meyer, and fucking Jay. And the studio execs were there, and fucking every role had 3 persons up for it and stuff. And then we round robin them off until there was 1 left. And so at the end of that day, you know, Universal was like, look, we can't argue, he was the best of the 3, but we still don't think he's much of an actor. So what we're gonna do is, we'll let you bring him to Minnesota, but we're not gonna pay for him to go to rehearsals. And we're not gonna pay to fly him out, and we're not gonna pay to put him up until we see the first day of dailies. When we see the first day of dailies, if we like him, then he's on the payroll. If we don't like him, you fire him, and Seth Green is gonna fly out. And I was like, fair enough, that's the fucking deal. So Jay didn't shoot for like the first week on Mallrats, because it was like, you have to be fucking ready, bro. None of this shit like fucking, I can't dance with all these people. Like, fuck you, dance, bitch. And goddamn it, if he didn't turn it on the very first day, all we had him shoot was all the backstage stuff with Renee Humphrey, Trish to the Dish, who was at the show last night. Because her and Elias, Trevor, have been going out for like 20 fucking years, or 16 years. Ever since Clerks II, they met at a party afterwards. And so Trish and Elias have been fucking ever since. It's really but so, it's the scenes with Jay and Trish backstage where he's like, do it, Doug, and he gives her the tape and all that shit. And he shot those scenes, we sent it to Universal. He couldn't like put them up online, there was no online, so we had to FedEx the footage and shit. And we waited for 2 days, fingers crossed, assholes clenched and shit. Jay was saying goodbye to everybody, just in case they sent him home, and everybody loved him at this point. And then the word came back from Universal, like, your friend can stay. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. So, I've known him since, I guess, 91. I mean, I've known who he was even before that. He was that dirty boy from town. Like, there's that Mewes kid, he broke the window at Beatles. Or there's that Mewes kid, I hear he put peanut butter on his dick and had a dog lick it off. Shit like that. He was a kid of local legend and shit. And then I got to know him, and he did those things, but he was that and so much more, you know? And he changed my life. Like, honestly, I don't know that we're still here having this conversation. I don't know what Clerks looks like without Jay in it. I mean, it's Dante Randall's movie, but Jay and Silent Bob, and let's be honest, Jay particularly buoys the movie, and those characters have a lot of fucking shoe leather on their feet because they've lasted nearly 3 decades, and that's all because of Jason. It's not like fucking Silent Bob is the one that makes people go, I love what he said, you know. Jay is the fucking guy you can repeat. Jay is the guy who's like, I know somebody just like that. My cousin's like Jay. My sister's like Jay. I was like, I'd love to meet her. Everybody knows somebody like Jay, so they said, I thought he was a true American original, and he absolutely is, but everybody has a true American original in their lives, just like Jay, that they compare him to. So I've gone on this journey with him for years, and he's always so appreciative. He's always like, thank you for taking me. And Jordan, his wife, who runs our company and shit, thank God. She was like a UCLA business grad. Thank God she has shit taste in men. Because she married Jay and started working for our company and shit like that. But, you know, she talks about like, my God, you guys have been together like since the beginning, and he fucking loves you and everything you do for him and stuff, and where would he be without you? I was like, I don't see it that way. Like, there was a moment in 2019 where we were standing at Groman's Chinese Theater, and we were putting our footprints and our handprints in the cement. Now, in our business, that shit's artifice. It doesn't really mean anything or whatnot. Right. They've got stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but you know, homeless people shit on those stars, so they really don't mean that much at the end of the day. But it's, you know, a thing that's in our business where people are like, hey, that's a fucking honor. There are lots of stars on the sidewalk. Like, if you're in the business, there's a good chance you stick around long enough, you'll get one of them. I have no doubt that one day I will have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That being said, Groman's Chinese Theater is rare real estate. That's where Clark Gable is. That's where fucking Steven Spielberg is. That's where the Avengers are. They're massive fucking movie stars. And me and Jay were standing there in the cement. Like, there's a picture my friend took, it's beautiful, of us standing there side by side with like fucking 100 paparazzi snapping pictures and shit in the forecourt of the Chinese Theater. And when I was a kid, when I was 9 years old, my parents took me, my brother and sister on a train ride to California and shit to see the footprints, because the Star Wars characters had just put their footprints, R2-D2, C-3PO, and Darth Vader. And so there's a picture of a 9-year-old Kevin Smith kneeling in front of the fucking footprints with, right next to his brother. And my dad took that picture. And my dad that day was showing me around the courtyard going like, that's Jimmy Durante, he put his nose in the cement. That's fucking Marilyn Monroe, that's this one, that's this one. And after he took the picture, before we left Groman's Chinese Theater, at my hand to the Lord, this happened. My father said a thing that he didn't fucking think twice about saying. It's the kind of thing you say to a kid when they like a thing. For example, if a kid likes baseball, you'd be like, maybe you'll play for the major leagues one day or something like that. Right. Just as we're about to leave Groman's Chinese Theater, my father goes, maybe you'll be here one day. And 40 years later, I was standing in the cement with Jay, putting our fucking footprints in.
That is so awesome.
It wasn't me. I didn't get in as a director. It wasn't director Kevin Smith. When you look at our footprints, there's our names, and under our names is our real names, Jay and Silent Bob. The only reason we got there was because I've been standing next to Jay professionally and personally for the better part of 30 years, and he is a fucking magician. He is the luckiest little leprechaun you'll ever meet in your life. So I know he feels like, oh, you've done so much for me, but when I was standing in the cement and we were not going into the water in New Jersey, but standing in the cement and going into the forecourt of the Chinese Theater, because where we're from, getting your feet in cement means something completely fucking different. It was really wonderful. I was like, he did this. Like, it wasn't me. I could not have done it. I would not be there as Kevin Smith, but I was there as Jay and Silent fucking Bob. And that's everything we do, Jay. So it is the friendship that has paid out in dividends beyond fucking belief, man. Like, I'm so glad that I wasn't like, we are not friends, leave my house, dirty town boy. Because dirty town boy was the ticket to my future. It was amazing.
And we're all glad that you did.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. For those sitting over here who may not notice, Liv's job is to sit here on stage all night with signs to let me know where I am and shit. And so the signs start coming up about 10 minutes out from the end of Q&A. It says 10 minutes till the end of Q&A, 5 minutes till the end of Q&A, end Q&A. Then the next card is 5 minutes over, 10 minutes over. The current card says 30 minutes over. But the cards keep going, man, and the fucking card that is the DEF CON drop dead. You have to get off the stage. A comet is hurling toward the earth. Stop fucking talking card is this one. But we're not there yet.
All right.
So we do one more. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Valerie.
What is it?
Valerie.
And we'll give it up for Valerie. She's next.
So I graduated in '94, so I've kind of grown up with you, as many of us probably have. And I was gonna also ask about Dogma sequel because it's my favorite. But what I was wondering as I was sitting there waiting for my turn is, did you realize when you cast Alanis Morissette that two of the most iconic voices of our Gen X generation would be in this film? Or did you just say, fuck it, Alanis Morissette is God? How did you?
Who was the other voice of Gen X?
You.
Oh,
You.
well, thank you.
Did you realize that as like one of the main voices of our generation, you were also casting one of the other main voices of our generation as God?
I never thought of myself as a voice of a generation, so I didn't think like that. But I did know that we were a couple of hardcore 90s kids.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, we met because of a mutual interest. I was listening to You Ought to Know and that whole album, Jagged Little Pill, over and over while we were on the road with Clerks. It was very popular at that point. And I got a phone call from my agent one day, and he was like, "Are you familiar with Alanis Morissette?" I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, man, she blows people in movie theaters." He was like, "How do you know that?" I was like, "She fucking sang it in that song." And he sang it to himself and he goes, "Oh shit, you're right." I was like, "What about her?" He's like, "She wants to meet you." I was like, "Well, this is my lucky day. Can we meet at the movies?" He's like, "No, you're gonna meet her at this place." It was called, what was it? Montana's. And it was in Santa Monica. So I went and fucking had lunch with Alanis. We were done shooting Chasing Amy. I had the dailies for Chasing Amy on me. So she had been touring. She was like, "I'm Alanis." And I was like, "Oh my God, I love your music and shit." I said, "Even more so, I love that you're Canadian. I'm a big Canada-phile and stuff. And I know that you were on fucking You Can't Do That on television, because I used to watch that show all the time and stuff." And she's like, "Well, we watched Clerks over and over on the tour bus. Like, that's all we watched over and over." And so, like, I feel like we're kindred spirits, man. I was like, "Oh, fuck, like, look, I ain't blowing anyone in theater, but I feel like you and I are the same, absolutely." And we became friends. I remember I went to her house. She lived on Tiger Tail, which was just such a cute name for a fucking place to live. She was like, they were like, "You're gonna meet her." When I met her for lunch, she was like, "Yeah, follow me back to my place." I was like, "Where is it?" She goes, "I live on Tiger Tail." And I was like, "Of course you do." You little magician. So we went back to her place and watched the dailies. I showed her what like Chasing Amy looked like and stuff. And so at that point, I said, "Hey man, the next movie we're making is Dogma. Why don't you play the lead?" And so I offered her Bethany. It was before Linda Fiorentino came into our lives. And Alanis read the script and loved it. She was like, "This is scary." She's like, "I've never acted this much in my life, and this is a lead role, and I don't think I can do this." And I was like, "No sweat, no sweat." And so, you know, later on we found Linda, and she did an amazing job. So Alanis goes to India, and then she comes back and she records that album, you know, with "Thank You" on it and stuff like that. And was a supposed former infatuation junkie, I think is the name. So she comes back and calls me as I'm driving to Pittsburgh on what I had was the world's biggest cell phone. Gigantic brick in 1998 and shit. I'm driving, I see a California number, I was like, "Hello," trying to shoulder it while driving. And she was like, "Hey, it's Alanis." And I was like, "Oh my God, man, how are you? Where you been, man?" And she was like, "Well, I just went to India, and like I really got in touch with myself, and I feel rested and confident. And I know that you've probably cast that role already, but if there's anything left in that movie, I would love to come play with you." And I was like, "There is one small but crucial role that's wide open." So I told her what it is, and she was like, "Oh my God, really?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Why do you want me to play that?" And I was like, "Because I always figured God would be Canadian." So she came out and fucking played, man. And, you know, she married, she got kids, she married to Solway and stuff, and happy and wonderful and beautiful. But this was back in the 90s and shit. And when she first got to, like, Pittsburgh, it was clear that, you know, yes, I wouldn't call myself a fucking Gen X icon or whatever.
Did you take her to the movies?
Believe me, I tried. But you could tell, like, there was electricity and stuff, and we were both in a moment in our career. I could do no fucking wrong. I was pulling cast like crazy and shit. That was, like, Dogma was the precipice, and then next was Jane's Hot Box Strike Back, and people were like, oh.
I love that too.
That's what, oh, so do I. But fucking the critics and shit, they were like, he's on his way somewhere. And they're like, oh, he's on his way up to somewhere else. So we're in Pittsburgh, and she gets out there, and I take her out on the city to like show her Pittsburgh and show her the ropes and be like, look, get whatever you need done by 5 o'clock because the city just closes down. The only city I've been in where the McDonald's closes at 7 p.m. It's fucking nuts, man. Where 7-Eleven closed at 4. So, you know, I'm showing her all around and stuff like that. And we wound up far from where we started in an empty end of town where we were kind of by ourselves in a scary location where all of a sudden somebody was across the street, the only other person within eyesight, and makes a beeline across the street and then starts walking directly in our path and heading toward us. And so she's talking and I'm clocking this because, you know, she's Canadian and she thinks everybody's nice. I'm from Jersey and I'm like, they're all trying to kill us. So I clock everybody and I'm clocking this guy and this guy's headed straight toward us. And fucking he starts reaching into his jacket. And in that moment, I realized I could never be Alanis Morissette's boyfriend because my first instinct was to run away. Without her, you know, not like, we gotta go. It's like, every man for himself! And the guy got right up to us and he pulled out a fucking stack of magazines from his jacket. He's like, I'm selling magazine subscriptions. Do you want one? And it was like fucking 6 o'clock at a dark Sunday night. And I was like, I'm good, man. I got all my magazines already. And I was like, I'll buy one. She bought a fucking magazine. She was very sweet. And then we kept walking and shit like that. It was only years later that I told her, I was just like, in that moment, I almost thought about bolting and leaving you. And she was like, he wouldn't have done that. I was like, you don't know young Kevin Smith. He was very self-preservatory. So, you know, she did a phenomenal fucking job in the movie. Alan Rickman absolutely loved her, loved hanging out with her and stuff. We remained friends, and she wrote the song for the movie, but there was never a moment of like, hey, is this a real thing? Because Jennifer came into my life right at the exact same time. So I met Alanis, cast Alanis in the movie like a couple months later and shit. And while I was in rehearsals on Dogma, I went out to Los Angeles to the Independence, not to the Independence Spirit Awards. First I went out to Los Angeles to rehearse with Chris Rock because he was on Lethal Weapon 3 or 4, and Joel Silver wouldn't let him go. He had a stop date, he was supposed to be sent to us. And he didn't. A week went by and they didn't let him go. And so Scott Mosier called up Joel Silver, who's like an Uber producer and shit. He was like, hey man, this is Scott Mosier, I'm the producer of Dogma. Like, Chris Rock's supposed to be here. I think he was done with your movie last week. Joel Silver's like, he's not done, you can't have him. And he fucking hung up and shit. So Scott was like, I guess you're going out to LA to rehearse with Chris Rock. So I go out to LA to rehearse with Chris Rock, and while I was going out there, they were like, Kevin, we need you to sit down and do an interview with USA Today. I said, why? And they're like, because there are people in town talking about how maybe Ben and Matt didn't write Good Will Hunting by themselves. I was like, well, who do they think wrote it with them? They're like, you. And I was like, well, that's a fucking joke. But this was at a time in my career where people were like, he's on his way up. He's making art films and shit. So I guess it was kind of believable. The other rumor was that William Goldman did a draft. The guy that wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he was a script doctor in those days. So they wanted me to go do an interview where I told people that wasn't the case because Good Will Hunting was in the Oscar race at that point. So the interview was about everything I'd done that year, Chasing Amy, Dogma next, with the Clerks comic book coming out and shit. And then there was a sidebar about Good Will Hunting, which I was a producer on. I could be like, 100% the boys wrote this fucking script. So I'd met people from USA Today, journalists from USA Today, and they all looked like my mother. They were all older, middle-aged people and shit. So I expected the person they sent to interview me to be the same. So I'm rehearsing with Chris Rock at the Bel Age Motel, which doesn't exist anymore now, it's the London Hotel. I'm rehearsing with Chris Rock and shit, and after we rehearsed, we're bullshit and chit-chat and whatnot. He's like, what are you doing later tonight? I was like, I don't know, maybe going to the details party or something. He's like, you know, you're a young kid from Jersey and Hollywood, man. You should really get a hooker. And I was like, no, I don't want to get a hooker. Fucking, I don't do that. And he's like, all right, well, just an idea and shit. And then he fucking left. My interview was coming up after that with the lady from USA Today. And then I got a fucking knock at the door, and I opened the door, and there was this gorgeous fucking woman standing there in like fucking tight jeans and a leather jacket and shit, my age, maybe even younger a little bit. And the first thought that went through my head when I saw the woman who would become my wife and have my child was, holy shit, Chris Rock sent a hooker to my room. What am I gonna do now? And then she was like, I'm Jen Schwalbach, I'm here to interview you. I was like, oh! I was like, you're from USA Today? Is your mother behind you? And so Jen and I met, and that started, and so I didn't ever look any further into the Alanis thing than that. And we remained friends like forever and still remain friends to this day. So, yeah, you just took me on a fucking journey, man. Holy shit.
And one more thing, I just want to say I'm so proud of you for everything that you've done for your health and for us, for your movies. Super proud.
It means the world, man. Thank you for that. All my love.
My friend just wants to say hi.
Who?
My friend just wants to say hi.
Fair enough. What's your name, friend?
My name is Owen, and I'm...
Owen?
Yeah.
Everyone give it up for Owen. He's last.
I'm an upcoming actor and artist. I just want to say you're a big inspiration for me. I used to draw clerk characters back in high school.
Fucking A, man.
Yeah.
I can't draw any. It's weird. I should learn to draw Silent Bob. I can draw an excellent Bullwinkle, but that's it.
So speaking of reboots, so I was wondering if we ever going to get a reboot of Clerks, the animated series, or a spin-off animated series of Jane Silent Bob.
I hope to one day be able to do the Clerks cartoon again, but that iteration of the Clerks cartoon with Leonardo, Mr. Plug, there's only one way it can happen, and that is at Hulu, because Disney owns the Clerks cartoon somehow. Because Miramax owned Disney when we made it. So they'll never put it on Disney Plus, ever. But they could put it on fucking Hulu. And when Justin Roiland's show, Solar Opposites, aired, I called my agent and I was like, holy shit, Hulu's doing adult animation. Please get me a fucking pitch meeting. We have a fucking cartoon that's turnkey. You don't have to develop it, you don't have to draw characters, everything's already done. We just turn the machine back on, man. And would pair up so nicely with that and shit. I bet you Justin would even produce it and whatnot. So my agent was like, all right, I'm into it. He called me back 10 minutes later and he was like, Hulu does not want to meet with you. I was like, what do you mean? He's just like, they like you, but they have no interest in a Clerks cartoon and shit. So that iteration of the Clerks cartoon, that's the only place we could do it. Now, I could do any Clerks cartoon I want according to my rights, according to the rights that I sold for Clerks. So we could do a Clerks cartoon if somebody wants to finance it. And we always felt like maybe after Clerks 3, I'm working with Netflix all the time on Masters of the Universe and shit. Maybe we go in and be like, hey, can we do the Clerks cartoon here, do 10 episodes and see what they say. If they're like, no, that shit's tired, then next year, I know the thing I'm gonna pitch, because it's fucking just hanging there and it's a perfect opportunity, it's in the culture and shit. Everyone now knows superhero movies, everyone now knows weed. So a Blunt Man and Chronic cartoon. So hopefully that's gonna happen, man. But I know what the next 5 movies are. Can I tell you what those are? I figured it out. We're at movie 15. Clerks 3 is my 15th film that I've directed. And thank you. And when I figured that out, I was like, holy shit, man. I'm within spitting distance of 20 movies. So let me see how I can get to 20. And I know what the 20th movie is, which could be the last movie I ever make, or at least the perfect one to go out on. So we'll get to that last. 16, probably Twilight of the Mallrats, if things go well with Lionsgate. But if not, 16, which is now 17, it would become 16. That is a movie called the 4:30 movie that I just wrote. I bought a movie theater in my hometown of Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. And so once I bought a movie theater, I was like, well, manufacture for use, man. If you got a movie theater, you got a whole set to make a movie on. So I wrote this movie, the 4:30 movie, is set in 1986, and it's about a day in my life with my friends where we would pay to see one movie and then hop into all the other movie theaters. So that could be 16 or 17. 18 is the long in the tooth weighted fucking moose jaws. We'll finally be able to do that. 19 is the aforementioned tusks with the dollar sign. But film 20 is my second chance at a trilogy. I never thought I'd make a trilogy, and tonight we completed one and shit. And I'm so close on another one. We just have to wait 10 years for our star to grow up. Jay and Silent Bob 3! Bang. Jay and Silent Bob 3. It'll be the 20th movie. Because Harley, my daughter, played fucking Jay's daughter in Jay and Silent Bob reboot. So in the Jay and Silent Bob sequel, the third movie, the last Jay and Silent Bob movie, Jay's daughter Logan, who is currently 7 years old, will be 10 years from now, she'll be 17. And at that point, Logan will play Jay's granddaughter, the daughter of Harley's character, Millie. And they will go to Hollywood one more time, presumably to stop some shit. And if I can get the money, because it'll be 10 years from now and I really won't give a shit, probably to space as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Sacramento, have you had a good time this evening? I cannot thank you enough for coming out and supporting the Convenience Tour kids. I leave you with the words of Becky, man. Please, live while you can, love while you can, and goddamn it, my friends, dream bigger. I love you all. Good night, Sacramento!